Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Tent of Abraham. I'm Tamir Kreisman from Jerusalem, Israel. We continue with Pirkei Rabbi Eliezer. We are still in chapter 36. This is 36d, and this one is called Covenants, Part 1. Hallu et Adonai kol goyim shabechu kol haomim ki gavar alenu chasdo ve'emet Adonai le'olam hallelujah. Rabbi Yehuda says, the three patriarchs made a covenant with the people of the land. Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, obviously. In this teaching, we're going to be discussing Avraham. In the next teaching, we are going to be discussing Yitzchak and Yaakov, okay? And we'll see how it all ties in. So the term in Hebrew for people of the land, they made covenants with people of the land. In Hebrew, it's called Am Haaretz, Am Haaretz. Now, this is a negative connotation as it refers to the land as in a low place, but there's also Am Haaretz among Israel, as in part of Israel. The Am Haaretz of Israel back then are the people that could not read or write, the people that really behaved boorish. Like a lot of Israel today, unfortunately. When you see what's going on outside, that's that kind of behavior that's called Am Haaretz. Anyway, like we said, it's a negative connotation. Now, these are the ones who forget about following the Torah, but are just simple souls, we'll say, for lack of a better word. Can be seen as the lights are on, but there's nobody home type of people, right? Okay, making a whole lot of noise, but there's nothing there. Now that we have that, let's get back to this. We're going to read through this relevant section, and then after we'll break it down. Rabbi Yehuda says, the three patriarchs made a covenant with the people of the land, and they are Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Abraham made a covenant with the people of the land when the angels were revealed to him. He was sure that there were no more than people of the land at first, right? As he ran towards them and wanted to make a great feast for them. At that hour, while Sarah was making cakes, the Midrash says that it was actually matzah because it was Erev Pesach. But again, there are different opinions. I gave you the example, the Ramban, Nachmanides. He writes that it actually was Yom Kippur where Abraham was circumcised, based on the wording over there. You could see from previous teachings. So while she was making cakes, meaning these matzot, she began to menstruate. And therefore, she did not serve them the bread. So Abraham ran to bring a young male bull, and the bull ran away from him, right into the cave of Machpelah. Abraham ran after it, right into the cave, and there he saw Adam and Eve laying down upon beds and sleeping. There were lit candles around them, and there was a pleasant smell upon them, like that of incense. And so he coveted the cave of Machpelah for a burial place. He goes, well, if Adam and Eve it's good enough for them, that is definitely good enough for me and mine. He told the Jebusites that he wishes to purchase the cave at a fair price with gold and a title deed to last forever. Smart man. Okay, so now let's get into this whole section. Line by line, according to one of our commentators, Velo od ela, who expounds upon these lines the most. He was sure they were no more than people of the land as he ran towards them, and he wanted to make a great feast for them. First, why do we read that Abraham wanted to make a feast for them? Meaning he wanted to, but didn't do according to his desire. And we need to understand why. At that hour, while Sarah was making cakes, she began to menstruate. And therefore, they were not served from that bread that she was making. So second, why does it mention her menstrual cycle here at this place, when it's not the main focus necessarily of our texts, but rather the running of the bull and the finding of the cave of Machpelah? Third, why was the discovery of the cave done so by means of a bull, specifically a bull? In one of the Midrashim, it says that Raphael came as one of the three angels, right? So it was Michael, Gabriel, and Raphael. So in one of Midrashim, it says that Raphael actually came in the image of a bull. We're talking spiritually speaking here, obviously, in the image of a bull, and continued walking until he stood at the entrance of the cave. So naturally, Abraham chased his guest to bring him into his tent so he could feed him, right? All valid questions. Okay. Genesis 18:2. And he lifted his eyes, and he saw, and behold, 3 men were standing beside him, and he saw, and he ran towards them from the entrance of the tent, and he prostrated himself to the ground. Vaysa enav vayera, vayine shlosha anashim nitzavim alav, vayera vayeretz lekratam, mipetach oel vayishtachu arza. Why does it say vayera, he saw, twice? According to Rabbeinu Bachye, when Abraham first saw them, he saw that they were men, and behold, 3 men, as it says. But afterwards, he saw again through his mind's eye that they were angels, right? They looked like men, because angels could do that. But when he really saw them, not with these eyes, because we are limited with these physical eyes, but through his mind's eye, that's exactly what it says. Be'ein ha'sechel literally means his mind's eye. He saw that they were angels. By this, we understand that the moment he saw them in human form, he desired to make a great feast for them. Wonderful. But settled for a smaller yet not less exclusive spread, as he knew that they were angels. You see, you can read another midrashim saying how they were not going to eat because they're angels who don't eat food, and yet it was God who told them, my main man Abraham just served you up a meal. You better open your mouths and eat every last thing that he gives you. Oh yeah, and make all those it's so good. Make all those good sounds. That's what happened. Now the question, in this particular case, in this particular sense, how did Abraham actually know for sure that they were angels? Okay, so let's say he saw in his mind's eye, but how does this actually manifest? Something has to happen when 3 archangels come into your presence. Because the moment they were in his presence, which was hearing distance from Sarah's tent, right? We heard that Sarah heard their conversation. Where's your wife? She's in the tent. Why? This is why. The moment they came into Abraham's presence, she began to menstruate. If this were any other circumstance or situation, you'd be right to ask, why is this relevant to our story? The answer is, you know a lot of 89-year-old women who get their periods. You see, this is where that miracle began. I'll give you another gem from the Zohar. It says that Sarah at that moment turned into a 19-year-old girl. 19, okay? In other words, she went back to being 19 biologically, as in like everything was working like she was a young woman, and she looked like she was a young woman. That's why it says that the years of Sarah were 127. She was 127, but when she was 100, she looked like she was 20. And when she was 20, she had the sins of a 7-year-old, which is sinless. Amazing. So at that moment, when she went back in time, meaning she became a young woman, she was like 19 again, although she was 89. At that moment, Abraham became young again. That's why she left. She's like, whoa, I'm young, but my old man is old, right? He can't do this. But then she saw him and she's like, oh, hey, how you doing? And that's where the whole thing started. So, which is why 38 years later, after this took place, was the binding of Isaac, right? 1 year later, you're going to have a son. Isaac was upon the altar at age 37. So 38 years later, at the binding of Isaac, Abraham prayed to God to make him look old again. Since at 137 years of age, he and Isaac, who was 37 at the time, looked like twins. They came back. They looked like twins. They don't know who's the father, who's the son. They both look like strong young men with the same face. Isaac looked like his father, exactly like his father. You understand? So Abraham prayed. He says, please, God, let's make a differentiation between, the elders and the youngers. He woke up the next morning. He was old and gray. No problem. He didn't care. All right. Coming back. So 3 days after the master of the universe told him in Genesis 17:19, and God said, indeed, your wife Sarah will bear you a son, and you shall name him Isaac, and I will establish my covenant with him as an everlasting covenant for his seed after him. All of a sudden, 3 angels approach. And what's this? What did you say, honey? You're what now? That's not possible. Not unless Oh, there we go. Right? Because Abraham told her what God said. But it wasn't exactly like she believed it. That's why the angels came. The angels came to confer it for Sarah's sake, not for Abraham. Abraham believed God. He believed everything that God said. But here Sarah's like, is it possible? Can I? Can't I? And it all worked out beautifully. So at that moment, it was confirmed to Abraham exactly who they were. And so a feast was not necessary. But since they did show up in human form in this realm and in his house, Abraham treated them like he does all his guests. Could you imagine, right? Elijah the prophet, Eliyahu Navi knocks on your door, comes in, and you know he's Elijah the prophet. You just saw him poof or whatever. You're not going to offer him some coffee or some cookies or something? Of course you will. I know you don't eat. You're an angel, but yo, I served Elijah some food. You understand? Of course you would want to serve angels. You wouldn't want to serve angels? And if they're coming to you, that means that they're giving you the opportunity to do hachnasat orchim, which was what Abraham was known for. Now, regarding the discovery of the cave by a bull, okay, what's going on over here? From the book called Hapardes, the orchard, we've learned that the attribute of the Sephira of Tiferet, which is splendor, okay, which is ascribed to Jacob, that's in between Chesed and Gvura. It's the perfect balance between Chesed and Gvura, between mercy on the right, Abraham, and judgment on the left, Isaac. That is Tiferet, right? Jacob received all the loving kindness of Abraham and all the judgment of Isaac, all in the positive senses. If you're just joining us, we've been going over this for years already. The reason that Abraham first begot Ishmael before Isaac was Ishmael took out all the garbage, all the trash, and Isaac got all the good. So we see in who's Ishmael? Ishmael is the Muslim world today. He took the opposite of loving kindness of giving. Chesed is giving, 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 giving. What does Ishmael do today in the world? They take. This is mine. You want? No, it's my holy place. I saw it first. It's mine, right? No, the city of David is ours, or it doesn't exist. The Temple Mount is ours because it's all this stuff. This is what they're doing. Then you have the firstborn son of Isaac was who? The firstborn son of Isaac. This was Esav. Who is Esav? Edom. That's Christianity. Blood, judgment. They live and die by the blood, covered by the blood of this, the blood of that. Everything's all about the blood. Modern day vampires. No problem. So he received all the schmutz from Isaac, and Jacob got all the positive sides of the judgment. That's why Jacob was the perfect culmination of Abraham and Isaac. Okay, now that we have that, let's continue. So from this book in Sefer Pardes, the aspect of Tiferet from the side of Gevurah, from the left side, is called ox or bull. It's very interesting, right? So we know that the left side, Joseph, is the ox, but from Tiferet, from the left side of Tiferet, that aspect is called ox, okay? And a very beautiful hint regarding the language here, usually when the Torah refers to a bull or an ox, the word that we read of is shol, right? Shol, that's a bull, that's an ox. But here the word is bakar. Bakar means cattle. Bulls, cows, calves, everything is cattle. It's all bakar. But when you say basar bakar, I want cow meat, meaning a bull is also from the cow family, right? Cattle. However, this word is an anagram of kever. Bakar, you just switch the kuf and the bet and you have kever, which means to bury or grave. Mi kavur sham, who's buried there? Avraham kavar et Sarah, he buried Sarah. That's why we see bakar instead of shol, to hint towards the place of burial. And habakar, the cattle or bull, spells out kivra, literally her grave. See? Isn't that beautiful? The Torah tells us everything, if we know only where and how to look. So Abraham understood this, of course. Now, that's not the simple side of, not that it's simply the side of judgment, but judgment already refined within Tiferet, meaning splendor, which holds Rachamim, mercy as well, like we said. So it's that side, the left side of Tiferet. From this he understood, Abraham was no dummy, he knew everything. From this he understood that in order to obtain this cave, he had to approach the owners with the aspect of mercy and judgment. In other words, make sure you do indeed pay in full, but within a limit. Give, but limitations, right? There's your mercy. Giving, but up until here. I'm not overpaying. It's a fair price. Which is why Abraham used the supposed opposite description when he spoke to Ephron in Genesis 23:4. I am a stranger and an inhabitant with you. Give me burial property with you so that I may bury my dead from before me. Ger vetoshav anochi imachem. Okay? If he is a ger, what is a ger? A ger is a stranger or a sojourner, right? We're not talking about a ger tzedek. That's a convert. If he is a stranger, he cannot be a toshav. What is a toshav? Resident. In ancient Israel, there was a ger toshav and ger tzedek. Who's a ger toshav? A ger toshav is a stranger, someone who's not part of Israel, but they live within the borders of Israel. That's called the ger toshav. And a ger tzedek is one who was not a Jew, born not a Jew, and they converted, and then they became part of Israel. Then they're already a ger tzedek, but again, that's the title of kind of the switchover, but they are Jews, l'chol davar, for everything. So again, if he is a stranger, he cannot be a resident or inhabitant. And if he is an inhabitant, he cannot be a stranger. You see? But here he says, Ger vetoshav anochi imachem. That only works for a ger toshav when it comes to Gentiles, like we said, living in the borders of Israel. And this was only during the days when the temple stood, and only in the first temple. Okay, so there is no ger toshav today. It's not. We got plenty of non-Jews living here in Israel. It means nothing. If there's no temple, it doesn't mean anything. We're still technically in the galut, even though we're physically in the land of Israel. We're still in the galut. Okay, so he told them, if I'm a stranger, if I'm not one of you, then sell it to me at full price. But if I am a resident, then you can go ahead and give it to me, or I can just take it because God did promise me this land. Yeah, you remember, you heard of my God. Everyone knew who Abraham was. You could read exactly what's going on over there in the chapter. After a bunch of back and forth, which can be read in Genesis chapter 23, both happened. They wanted to give it, and he bought it. We've covered this plenty of times in the Parsha classes as to all the reasons why. Okay? Even the deeper meanings, dafka, with the name of Ephron. Who is Ephron? Ephron comes from the word afar. Abraham was actually making a covenant with the angel who is in charge of burial, called Duma. Dom means silence. Anyway, this is a whole nother class, but well, not now. Okay, go find those. All right, so where are we at? So what about Adam and Eve sleeping in beds surrounded by candles and incense? We've learned that the righteous are called alive in their lifetime, but even more so after death, because then they are not limited by this physical reality, right? They're all set free. The opposite of the wicked, who are called dead even while they live. And it saddens me to say, but from all the halacha books that I've read and the teachings that I've heard, a wicked one of Israel. Who is a wicked one of Israel? It comes down to them living according to the Torah or not, and specifically regarding the desecration of the Sabbath publicly. In other words, if someone, again, this is not my opinion, this is halacha. There's no argument with halacha, okay? It's not midrash, it's not an opinion, it is how we go. This is our law. When a Jew does not keep Shabbat publicly, in other words, if you're driving, lighting, doing anything that you're not allowed to do, public, didn't say in your own home, befarhesia barabim, he is called the wicked one of Israel. And again, if you look at the numbers today, how many wicked ones of Israel do we have? More so than not. Okay. Understand that in Israel today, most people care nothing for the Torah, and even those who have the appearance of God-fearing Jews. There is a reason Mashiach will judge not by his eyes or by his ears, but by the smell, right? He's going to smell the fear and reverence of the Lord on every individual. Because, look at this. Look how pious I am. I got a big beard. Come on now. Doesn't work like that. Look at all the wonderful things that I say. No. He can smell if you truly fear the Lord or not. The reckoning that is coming to Israel is not going to be a pretty sight, I'm just telling you, because after all is said and done, there are no excuses. So if Adam and Eve are asleep, since they are counted among the righteous, since they did complete tshuva, why do they need candles and incense? What's the deal over there? And the answer is that when they wake, and believe you me, they have and will awaken, that it will be pleasant for them. It's very simple, that they'll wake up to a nice smell. Certain individuals do not decay as time goes on, since they have perfected even their physical bodies. And so the soul enjoys going back and forth from the supernal Garden of Eden to the body, because ultimately, why are we put in the dust? We've learned this because we are made up of dust. So when we go back into the stuff we are made up of, that is where the tum'at met, the impurity of death, leaves us, and this is how we become purified. God is very considerate. Okay, you wake up, nice smelling incense all around you with nice candles. Beautiful. And the final point of what we just read was regarding the deal struck to purchase the cave. And with who? The deal that Abraham struck with the Hittites, as in the sons of Het, as said in Genesis 23:16. And Abraham listened to Ephron, here's the guy, and Abraham weighed out to Ephron the silver that he had named in the hearing of the sons of Het, 400 shekels of silver, accepted by the merchant. This was made under duress. They made Abraham write down a contract with him, meaning there was not only the purchase, but a contract that came with the purchase. Conditions, if you will, fine print. They made Abraham write down in a contract with them that the city and territory will never be taken over by Abraham's descendants. Otherwise, they would not give him or sell him the cave. Abraham knew that this was destined to be his. So like the wise Jew that he was, he did the best that he could under the circumstances before him. And so thank God for King David, who came along later to completely remedy this problem right here. David also did the same thing with the covenants that Isaac and Jacob made, which we will be discussing, like we said, next class. David, as we know, became the fourth wheel of the chariot of God, and one of the four elements of which Adam was created from. Four elements: water, fire, wind, or spirit, wind, and earth. Water is Abraham, fire is Isaac, wind is Jacob, and David is earth. Malchut, that's the lowest point. That is Adamah, literally, earth. These are the four elements. These are the four wheels, or the four legs of the Merkavah, the chariot that holds God's presence in this world. It has already been established, okay? So you guys understand that, right? Abraham is mercy, Isaac is judgment, Jacob is splendor, and David is kingship. Now, let's continue reading from Pirkei Rabbi Eliezer. Okay, now that we just explained that chunk that we read in the beginning. Why were they called Jebusites? Are they not Hittites? Like we just read, they are clearly Hittites. But what did we read back then? That they were Jebusites, right? In the part in the beginning that I read to you. But rather, the name of the city was called Yevus, Jebus. And for that, they were called Jebusites, although they were Hittites, and they did not receive anyone else, right? So in other words, I come from America, and Arena comes from South Africa, and, Israel's a melting pot. But since we're here, we're all Israeli, right? We come from there. Yes, I'm American, but I'm Israeli. Okay, you get it. Or I live in Jerusalem. I'm a Jerusalemite. And so, you know, Jerusalem back in the days of Abraham was a Jebusite city, and it was called Yevus, according to them. We could see this in 1 Chronicles 11:4. And David and all of Israel went to Jerusalem, that is Jebus, and there were the Jebusites, the inhabitants of the land. Vayelech David v'kol Yisrael Yerushalayim, hi Yevus, v'sham hayevusi yoshvei haaretz. What does it mean that they wouldn't receive anyone else? You see, they knew very well who Abraham was. Like we said, everyone knew who he was. He was the most famous man in the world, and also the wealthiest man in the world. Look how they address him in chapter 23, verse 5. And the sons of Chet answered Abraham, saying to him, verse 6, listen to us, my Lord. You are a prince of God. Nasi in modern day Hebrew is president, okay, but leader, right? Shma'enu Adoni, my Lord, please listen to us. Nasi Elohimata, you are a prince of Elohim in our midst. In the choicest of our graves, bury your dead. Wherever you want. You want us to dig up some fresh, whatever you want. None of us will withhold this grave from you to bury your dead. Whoa, what honor, right? But again, it wasn't necessarily honor. I gave that teaching. Look in the, I believe is, what is it? Chayei Sarah, right? Yeah. Look in my previous parashot of Chayei Sarah. These things are in there. And not only was he a prince of God, but we have learned many times that Abraham was given the title of Melchizedek, right? From who? From Shem, the former Melchizedek, the previous Melchizedek, who was the Kohen priest to the highest God. Well, we have also learned time and again that everyone in the world mistranslates this and doesn't understand the Hebrew, which is why they think that a priest and king in Judaism can be the same person. It cannot. Clearly it cannot. Line of Aaron from the father's side, line of David from the father's side. Exclusively. That is it. I know for a fact that I'm connected to King David 3 ways, in 3 different ways, but all from my mother's side. I have no idea where I'm connected to from my father's side. He doesn't know his history. My mother and her sisters and my aunts, they can still trace back all the way from this person and that person and that person, all the way back to King David. But if my father is not from King David, doesn't matter, right? My grandmother on my mother's side, she is Katz, meaning Kohen Tzaddik. She comes from a priestly family. Her father was a Kohen, but she is not. So what? So yes, I have Kohen blood in me. Can I serve as a priest? No, because my father is not a priest. You see how that works? It works both ways. David's mother was from the tribe of Dan. Anyway, I digress. Let's continue. They spoke to Abraham with great respect because of who he was, but they only were going to allow him to bury Sarah and no one else, including himself, at a later time. And so, let's continue. He, Abraham, began to prostrate himself before them, as said in Genesis 23:12, and Abraham prostrated himself before the people of the land. Now, the inhabitants of the land back in the day and throughout the world, they were no fools, okay? They were way more advanced than we can possibly imagine, much smarter than we are today. But, I mean, there's no comparison. Now, since Abraham walked in the fire before the known world, everyone knew of the creator of the universe, but not everyone chose to live according to his ways. Look at how the sons of Chet address Abraham in our text over here, okay, from Pirkei Rabbi Eliezer. They said to him, "We know that the Holy One, blessed be He, is destined to give you and your seed after you all these lands." You're going to get it anyway, you and your seed, right? And so establish a covenant with us that Israel. How would they know Israel? This is according to the Midrash. You understand? That's why it's like calling Abraham a Jew. Was Abraham a Jew? For all intents purposes, yes, right? Because every Jew is Israel. So you understand, calling him a Jew, that's how we understand what Jews are today. Who are all Israel today? They're the Jews. If someone is not a Jew, they're not Israel. Unless they convert, then they become Israel. Like we said, people like to say, I am Israel. Okay, prove it. do what needs to be done. That's the only way you know. So establish a covenant with us, and so that Israel will not inherit the city of Jebus, meaning Jerusalem, unless the sons of Jebus, the Jebusites, do so of their own free will. In other words, unless they give it up, unless they sell it, right? Own free will. And so, how, pray tell, did the Canaanites know of the importance of Jerusalem, which they titled Jebus? Because of Melchizedek, king of Shalem, right? That's the city. Shem was the oldest man in the world at the time. That's the first Melchizedek over there. I believe it was about 500 years at this time. He died at 600. And if the oldest guy in the world, who comes from the world before the flood, says that this spot is holy, you can understand why anyone would see the value in it. And so they knew exactly what was going on. Abraham then purchased the cave of Machpelah with gold and with an eternal deed or document, as an eternal heritage, as said in Genesis 23:16. And Abraham listened to Ephron, and Abraham weighed out to Ephron the silver that he had named in the hearing of the sons of Het, 400 shekels of silver accepted by the merchant. In other words, stamp of approval. Now, look at the detail that the book of Jasher goes into, okay, in this exchange. And Ephron and all his brothers heard this. And Abraham weighed out to Ephron 400 shekels of silver in the hands of Ephron and in the hands of all his brethren. And Abraham wrote this transaction, and he wrote it and testified it with 4 witnesses. And these are the names of the 4 witnesses. Amigal, son of Abishna, the Hittite. 2. Adichorom, son of Ashunach, the Hivite. 3. Abdon, son of Achiram, the Gomerite. And 4. Bakdil, the son of Abudish, the Zidonite. 4 nations right here. 4 dudes from 4 different nations who are witnesses. We have their names and their fathers' names. And Abraham took the book of the purchase and placed it in his treasures. I wonder who's got those and what else is in there. And these are the words that Abraham wrote in the book, namely, that the cave and the field Abraham brought from Ephron the Hittite, and from his seed, and from those that go out of his city, and from their seed forever, are to be a purchase to Abraham and to his seed, and to those that go forth from his loins, for a possession of a burial place forever. And he put a signet to it and testified it with witnesses. Legit. And the field and the cave that was in it, and all the place were made sure unto Abraham and unto his seed after him. From the children of Het, behold, it is before Mamre in Hebron, which is in the land of Canaan. You see, signed documents, witnesses, goes a long way. And what did the people, so we're back to our text, and what did the people of Jebus do after this, meaning for the future? They built engraved images, tzilamim, idols of copper, and stood them up throughout the main road of the city. What did they engrave on them? The oath of Abraham. And you'll see in the future teachings, they actually built images of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. It's crazy stuff. So why did they use copper out of all the metals? Because copper closest resembles flesh and blood. We're talking about from the metals here, yeah? Okay, so in other words, how you could play with it, how it's bendy and whatnot. Or, yeah. And if you're thinking, so what? Understand just how powerful the word of Abraham was and still is. A covenant that could not be broken unless the other party does not keep the covenant, thereby rendering it null and void. Or in other words, powerless. And when Israel entered the land with Joshua, and they wanted to enter into the Jebusite city, they could not enter because of the oath of Abraham. as said in Judges 1:21. And the children of Benjamin did not drive out the Jebusites that inhabited Jerusalem, and the Jebusites dwelt with the children of Benjamin in Jerusalem until this day. Yeah, it's actually true. Well, I mean, the Jebusites, Muslims. Anyway. Okay, now let's give some background here. This all began when it was relevant, okay? And that was in the days of Joshua. As it was his job, Joshua's job, was to divide the land according to the lots to the remaining tribes, right? Why do I say remaining? Because the tribes of Reuben, Gad, and half the tribe of Manasseh already chose their lot, and it was in the east side of the Jordan before they entered into the land. And there was one more tribe hinted to regarding the specific portion of the land, and that is Judah. Book of Numbers 14:24, but as for my servant Caleb, since he was possessed by another spirit and he followed me, I will bring him to the land to which he came, and his descendants will drive its inhabitants out. Who's Caleb? Caleb is Judah, from the line of Judah. Who drove them out? It was King David. Which specific part of the land did he enter? Did he already come in, right? The southern part, specifically Hebron, where he prayed at the graves of the patriarchs for strength. If you want to see the exact borders of Judah, just read Joshua 15. It breaks it down exactly. And what does the last verse in that chapter say? After the wars and the triumphs and the dividing of the land, verse 63 in Joshua 15, as for the Jebusites, the inhabitants of Jerusalem, the children of Judah could not drive them out, but the Jebusites dwelt with the children of Judah in Jerusalem to this day. Now, we know that, especially where Temple Mount is, you have Benjamin and Judah going right through the temple. The Holy of Holies is in the lot of Benjamin, and the altar is in the lot of Judah. Okay? So Benjamin couldn't drive him out. Judah couldn't drive him out. What's going on? Later on, Judah does drive him out. Okay? So there's a distinction here between Joshua and the tribe of Judah. Joshua did his part by defeating the Amorite kings. But just like, let's say, the states, ideally, right? Each state has its own governing body, and each state would prefer to handle its issues internally. Okay? So you see, not Judah at first, or Benjamin later, or Benjamin then Judah, could take the city. Did they try? Maybe. But likely not, since those images with the words of Abraham were exposed in the streets. And so long as his word stands, Jerusalem will not belong to his descendants. That is, until David came along. To be continued. Okay? Now stay tuned for next week's class as we delve even further into the oaths of our forefathers, Isaac and Jacob, made with the inhabitants of the land. And the man who all of Israel was and still is waiting for would cleanse the land of idolatry, shatter the images of impurity, unite the tribes as one, and would be crowned by all the tribes as the first king of the united kingdom of Israel. That's today's class. Thank you so much for joining me. Have a wonderful rest of the week. Have a Chodesh Tov, and I'll see y'all next week. Bye-bye.